our motivations are unbelievably interesting. I mean, I've been working on this for a few years, and I just find the topic still so amazingly engaging and interesting. So I want to tell you about that. The science is really surprising. The science is a little bit freaky, okay? We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think. There's a whole set of unbelievably interesting studies. I want to give you two that call into question this idea that if you reward something, you get more of the behavior you want. If you punish something, you get less of it. So let's go from London to the mean streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the northeastern part of the United States. And let's talk about a study done at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Here's what they did. They took a whole group of students, and they gave them a set of challenges. Things like memorizing strings of digits, solving word puzzles, other kinds of spatial puzzles, even physical tasks like throwing a ball through a hoop. Okay, they gave them these challenges, and they said to incentivize their performance, they gave them 3 levels of rewards. Okay? So if you did pretty well, you got a small monetary reward. If you did medium well, you got a medium monetary reward. And if you did really well, if you were one of the top performers, you got a large cash prize. Okay? We've seen this movie before. This is essentially a typical motivation scheme within organizations, right? We reward the very top performers, we ignore the low performers, and the other folks kind of in the middle. Okay, you get a little bit. So what happens? They do the test, they have these incentives. Here's what they found out. 1, as long as the task involved only mechanical skill, bonuses worked as they would be expected. The higher the pay, the better their performance. Okay, that makes sense. But here's what happens. But once the task called for even rudimentary cognitive skill, a larger reward led to poorer performance. Now this is strange, right? A larger reward led to poorer performance? How can that possibly be? Now what's interesting about this is that these folks here who did this are all economists, 2 at MIT, 1 at the University of Chicago, 1 at Carnegie Mellon, okay? The top tier of the economics profession. And they're reaching this conclusion that seems contrary to what a lot of us learned in economics, which is that the higher the reward, the better their performance. And they're saying that once you get above rudimentary cognitive skill, it's the other way around. Which seems like this kind of, the idea that these rewards don't work that way seems vaguely left-wing and socialist, doesn't it? It's kind of this kind of weird socialist conspiracy. For those of you who have those conspiracy theories, I want to point out the notoriously left-wing socialist group that financed the research, the Federal Reserve Bank. So this is the mainstream of the mainstream coming to a conclusion that's quite surprising, seems to defy the laws of behavioral physics. So this is strange. It's strange finding. So what do? They say, this is freaky. Let's go test it somewhere else. Maybe that $50 or $60 prize isn't sufficiently motivating for an MIT student, right? So let's go to a place where $50 is actually more significant relatively. Right? So let's take the experiment. We're going to go to Madurai, India, rural India, where $50, $60, whatever the number was, is actually a significant sum of money. So they replicated the experiment in India roughly as follows. Small rewards, the equivalent of 2 weeks' salary. Small performance, low performance, 2 weeks' salary. Medium performance, about a month's salary. High performance, about 2 months' salary. Okay, so those are real good incentives. Okay, so you're going to get a different result here. Well, what happened, though, was that the people offered the medium reward did no better than the people offered the small reward. But this time around, the people offered the top reward. They did worst of all. Higher incentives led to worse performance. What's interesting about this is that it actually isn't all that anomalous. This has been replicated over and over and over again by psychologists, by some extent by sociologists, and by economists, over and over and over again. For simple, straightforward tasks, those kinds of incentives, if you do this, then you get that, they're great. For tasks that are algorithmic, set of rules where you have to just follow along and get a right answer, if-then rewards, carrots and sticks, outstanding. But when the task gets more complicated, when it requires some conceptual, creative thinking, those kinds of motivators demonstrably don't work. In fact, money is a motivator at work, but in a slightly strange way. If you don't pay people enough, they won't be motivated. What's curious about, there's another paradox here, which is that the best use of money as a motivator is to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table. Pay people enough so that they're not thinking about money and they're thinking about the work. Now, once you do that, it turns out there are 3 factors that the science shows lead to better performance, not to mention personal satisfaction. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is our desire to be self-directed, to direct our own lives. Now, in many ways, traditional notions of management run afoul of that. Management is great if you want compliance, but if you want engagement, which is what we want in the workforce today as people are doing more complicated, sophisticated things, self-direction is better. Let me give you some examples of this, of almost radical forms of self-direction in the workplace that lead to good results. Let's start with this company right here, Atlassian, an Australian company. It's a software company, and they do something really cool. Once a quarter on a Thursday afternoon, they say to their developers, for the next 24 hours, you can work on anything you want. You can work on it the way you want. You can work on it with whomever you want. All we ask is that you show the results to the company at the end of those 24 hours in this fun kind of meeting, not a star chamber session, but this fun meeting with beer and cake and fun and other things like that. It turns out that that one day of pure, undiluted autonomy has led to a whole array of fixes for existing software, a whole array of ideas for new products that otherwise had never emerged. One day. Now, this is not an if-then incentive. This is not the sort of thing that I would have done 3 years ago before I knew this research. I would have said, you want people to be creative and innovative? Give them a freaking innovation bonus. If you can do something cool, I'll give you $2,500. They're not doing this at all. They're essentially saying, you probably want to do something interesting. Let me just get out of your way. One day of autonomy produces things that had never emerged. Okay, let's talk about mastery. Mastery is our urge to get better at stuff. We like to get better at stuff. This is why people play musical instruments on the weekend. You got all these people who are acting in ways that seem irrational economically. They play musical instruments on weekends. Why? It's not going to get them a mate. It's not going to make them any money. Why are they doing it? Because it's fun, because you get better at it, and that's satisfying. Go back in time a little bit. I imagine this if I went to my first economics professor, a woman named Mary Alice Schulman, and I went to her in 1983 and said, Professor Schulman, can I talk to you after class for a moment? Yeah. I got this inkling. I got this idea for a business model. I just want to run it past you. Here's how it would work. You get a bunch of people around the world who are doing highly skilled work, but they're willing to do it for free and volunteer their time, 20, sometimes 30 hours a week. Okay, she's looking at you somewhat skeptically there. Oh, but I'm not done. And then what they create, they give it away rather than sell it. It's going to be huge. I mean, she truly would have thought I was insane. Okay, it seemed to fly in the face of so many things. But what do you have? You have Linux powering 1 out of 4 corporate servers in Fortune 500 companies, Apache powering more than the majority of web servers, Wikipedia. What's going on? Why are people doing this? Why are these people, many of whom are technically sophisticated, highly skilled people who have jobs? Okay? They have jobs. They're working at jobs for pay, doing sophisticated technological work. And yet, during their limited discretionary time, they do equally, if not more, technically sophisticated work, not for their employer, but for someone else for free. That's a strange economic behavior. Economists who look into it, why are they doing this? It's overwhelmingly clear. Challenge and mastery, along with making a contribution. That's it. What you see more and more is a rise of what you might call the purpose motive, is that more and more organizations want to have some kind of transcendent purpose, partly because it makes coming to work better, partly because that's the way to get better talent. And what we're seeing now is, in some ways, when the profit motive becomes unmoored from the purpose motive, bad things happen. Bad things ethically sometimes, but also bad things just like not good stuff, like crappy products, like lame services, like uninspiring places to work. That when the profit motive is paramount, or when it becomes completely unhitched from the purpose motive, it's just, people don't do great things. More and more organizations are realizing this and sort of disturbing the categories between what's profit and what's purpose. And I think that actually heralds something interesting. And I think that organizations that are flourishing, whether they're profit, for profit, or somewhere in between, are animated by this purpose model. Let me give you a couple of examples. Here's the founder of Skype. He says, our goal is to be disruptive, but in the cause of making the world a better place. Pretty good purpose. Here's Steve Jobs. I want to put a ding in the universe. All right? That's the kind of thing that might get you up in the morning and racing to go to work. So I think that, that we are purpose maximizers, not only profit maximizers. I think the science shows that we care about mastery very, very deeply. And the science shows that we want to be self-directed. And I think that the big takeaway here is that if we start treating people like people and not assuming that they're simply horses, slower, smaller, better-smelling horses, if we get past this kind of ideology of carrots and sticks and look at the science, I think we can actually build organizations and work lives that make us better off, but I also think they have the promise to make our world just a little bit better.
Well, that was a great. I thought that the name of the book is Drive: The Surprising, and Daniel Pink, he's the author. Yeah, I've read the book. It's an outstanding book, and it does turn. You said it turns things kind of on its head. But that was perfect timing. I've not seen that, but like I said, I read the book. It's really good.
So we show that for a purpose, to say, with that insight, what do you think you can use to leverage the innovative ideas within your organization? Do you think this is a model that you'll be able to sell, you'll be able to implement? Or asking, what is the purpose motive of Altech?
Good question. There's certainly parts of the businesses that it's possible to implement, and some good has got to come from it. I mean, there's just no doubt. The question is how much work will be left undone by those people at that point in time, which means you just need a few more people. So we're back to budget, aren't we?
But I think one of the takeaways that I get out of this is that, and that it makes it for a hard sell perhaps, but is that when the software company in Australia, they didn't talk about the monetization of the benefits, but there were monetary benefits, and that's the hard part, is to say, because it's counterintuitive, right? That's probably what you find with most senior leaders, is that makes no sense. But you say, what? But let me test the model, and here's an example of what other companies have done, where here's the benefit, here's the financial benefit that you can get from this. You might get some of the leaders' attention then.
Atlassian just in public, the IPO, I think, in Australia right now, last week.
Ooh. It's probably too late to get the stock, though.
Are your programmers allowed to work from home to avoid the traffic, come in at 10 and then only work a 6-hour day because they've already put in 2 or 3 It's this kind of stuff
and
that
the other
can
thing
make
is
a difference.
I've also had programmers that finish projects before time because they worked at home on their own time because it was interesting, and they're not allowed to go live with it. And then 3 years later, those projects see the light of day. The only problem is I've been there 12 years. One of the projects I've done was subsidizing hardware in your phone contracts. They've only last year, November, launched it in AutoPage as a great idea. I wrote the application in 2004 to do that. I used almost the same code last year to just finish it off. And a lot of things changed. Our billing system, fortunately, didn't change, so I could use that piece of code. But I used almost the same code that I did when I was a junior starting there and doing this project 11 years ago. So the thing is that sometimes I would agree that this is a very good idea, but then you need the people to be able to actually launch it, because that is what makes a person with, I would say, that the person that doesn't care about the value or the monetary compensation for a product wants his product to be available. It doesn't help him spending time in creating this nice system or this nice application or this nice idea or this whole thing, and it never sees the light of day. That will be the last thing he develops.
Mm.
So some of the challenges, and I understand exactly what you're saying. I mean, I used to be doing very similar things when I was at Nokia, showing new opportunities and so on. And sometimes, depending on management, they don't see the vision. But the thing, if I reflect back on some of the ideas that I had, the approach that I would take now would be completely different. It's explaining what the value proposition is. So going in and saying, hey, look, if we do this and that, it's going to be better. You really need to build almost a business case around it, and being able to speak the language. If you're talking to a financial person is not going to be listening to flowery words and things like that. They're not, as we say in the US, touchy-feely people. What they want to see is hard facts, and they want to see the numbers. So I think it's really important that you speak the language of the people that you're trying to influence. But I find that is extremely important.
So how many of you in the room, I forget, how many of you are in sales? 3? I'd probably argue that you all are.
You're all up, yeah.
You knew where I was going with that, right? And interestingly, if you found that and you like that Daniel Pink's book, his follow-on book was called "To Sell is Human," and that's exactly the point that Roman is making. Is a lot of times people don't think of themselves. So if you're thinking, well, I need to sell this idea, so I'm selling to a financial person. Well, what are the things? How would I position this idea that's going to resonate with that person? So Daniel Pink followed on a lot of the concepts and ideas from that book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, and then his follow-on was called "To Sell is Human," and that's his point. Is that we tend to think of the Willy Loman sales guy at the car lot. Those days are gone, but we all have we're all trying to sell ideas, right? Internally as well as externally.
And I think that's also, you need to know who you're dealing with as well, and who you're selling to, and you
Absolutely.
need a better understanding. I mean, I sent through a whole proposal to our CEO with a business idea. It wasn't such a basic business idea. It was a reward system. Like Eggers got it. The same with Eggers, and you get free points, and then you can get free airtime and all that kind of stuff. And I put the whole business plan together, and the mindset there is that this should have been coming from the marketing department. So leave it up to them. I will pass your idea on to them and let them work with it. Okay, that's fallen flat now, because obviously the marketing department is not interested. So I think that's also one of the issues that we have as well, is that you've got your different departments all working in silos, and you don't have this cross-networking of ideas and innovation.
Yeah, I think the bigger the company, the more challenging that becomes. And I tell you, at HP, I mean, you can imagine the company our size is that. I mean, I joke that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. I've joked that we don't even know there is a left hand, let alone what they're doing.
But our problem is our company's not that big, and we have the same problem.
It can be, but I think that the point is that, I mean, if you had a really good idea, I mean, if you're in sales, I've been in sales and sales management for years. If somebody doesn't take the idea first, then if you really believe in it,
You take it to the opposition.
or that's an option. Or you take it to marketing and say, "Can I? Here's my idea. Can I?" And you sell them on the idea.
yeah.
I mean, and I'm not being criticized. I'm just saying that, if you're passionate about it, because Daniel talks about purpose, right? If that's what gives you that sense of purpose, then you almost. It's like asking it. Yeah, it's almost like asking artists, "Why do you do that?" I mean, and many times they won't say, "Well, because I enjoy it." They'll say, "I have to." They don't, almost like they don't understand the question. No, I have to create. Like I'll die if I don't create, and it's really hard is to get that sense of purpose. It is.
It'd be nice if we had a portal that you could load your ideas onto it.
No, that's what we were saying. There's got to be the platform in it, and then basically anybody can just do it because they want to do it, not because they have to.
You have to sell them on it.
Yeah, that's one of the points we have, because they're purpose-driven at the end of it. When more ideas came out of the 24 hours, the whole team of them. So,
I think Google embraced that research. That's why they've got the extra one day.
yes.
Things like Android came out of that. A number of the value-added labs were people that said, Android was a hobby of one of the guys. Said, let's build an operating system for a mobile phone and look at the impact Android has on the world today. And that was one of the results of that 1 day a week exercise. But it must be said that it's individuals with drive and passion, but don't look forward to the next episode of House of Cards like I do. But that drive and create and are challenged by these opportunities. And, I think that's very important.
Or otherwise, what happens? Like my old company, Nokia. When I joined them, I was the second employee in the PCS group and helped build an organization that became global, became revenues, over $1 billion and so on. We were very driven. We created a unique environment, but as the company grew, they lost sight of market needs, customer needs, and became no longer responsive or no longer relevant. And today, what happens? They're no longer a leader. They're no longer relevant. Companies need to redefine themselves. I think that every individual, in their own way, you need to set your own influence on the people that you can. You can't change the world overnight, but maybe you can start by changing the people that you interact and take a different approach where, you open up their eyes and they open up other people's eyes.
How many of you are in leadership positions where you lead teams? Sometimes when we have working on larger deals, we have war rooms where the deal team will get in there, and sometimes I'll sit in and I don't listen in as much for the dynamic of the deal and the details of the deal, but what I watch is the interaction of the team, and I look to whoever's leading that team to say, how are they setting the tone, and then what's the nature of the interaction with the members of the team, and then sometimes I'll just sit back quietly, and sometimes that makes them nervous, sometimes it doesn't. And usually when I'm done, I'll say, okay, what I'm looking for is, what's the chemistry? What's that sense of purpose and dynamic that Roman was talking about? Because if you don't have that, when you take that deal to the client, they will pick up on it. They will pick up on your body language. They will pick up on the tone and the intonation in your voice, the subtle human cues, and they'll know whether or not you believe in what. And that's what especially if you're looking at a large outsourcing engagement, whatever the deal is. If they don't think you believe in it and you're not convicted by it, then they probably won't buy. And it's really kind of, it does get that simple. So no matter what is your ideas, because you all bat around some really interesting ideas. It's figuring out how do you take that and sell it and to make the company better, because that's what you're saying, right? You do want the company to get better, right? I'm assuming, or else why would you be here?
Well, but your company wants you to be better.
Yeah.
Because that's why you're here. They really do. Company culture.
Interesting.
I'm detecting a sense of cynicism.
The thing is that yes, but you're not allowed to implement the things that you learn here yet. Because if you look at the courses that we've already done in this whole master degree,
like to implement?
there's things like you have to plan before you start rolling out stuff, and you have to actually prepare certain documents before you go to the next step. There's no time for that, so they shortcut and say, no, sorry, that's fine, just do it now and we'll worry about the other stuff later. Market research sounds very interesting, but we know that our people want this information.
So one of the things, there's a few of you that are in leadership position, and those of you that are, you can start deploying some of these learnings that you have and some of these changes and start setting examples. So one of the things that I heard was things are siloed within your company, but within your own teams, are there silos? Do all of your colleagues that work with you in your team, as part of your team, do they know what the vision and the mission is? Do they? Yes?
There'll always be silos.
There will always be silos.
We do our best to eliminate those things, but it's the engaged people, the 28% that engage. It's working those.
It does. One
Yeah.
person can spark and make a change. I can tell you this. Try breaking down the barriers within your own environment where you have some control. To me, it's vision, clarity, focus, execution. When I work with my companies on board levels, and I work with several companies, and I think that as we were having dinner last night, you've noticed that I got very animated when I started talking about some of my companies. I had the same excitement that the founders have of these companies. Otherwise, I would not be involved. In other words, I truly believe in the purpose, the value, the vision of the company. And you really have to also believe that you are in a position that you can make some changes. I would not look, when I joined Nokia, I did what was right for the company. And there were silos as the company grew. I started out, I was the second guy, and when I left, in the United States there were 6,000 people. I didn't know 6,000 people. When we started, I knew everybody in the Americas. There were 40 of us. But then the company grew, and it's impossible. But we all work for a common vision and a common mission, and that's what drives us. And I used to remind some of my colleagues, some that were my peers, some that were superior, and some that were subordinate, that we all work for one company. And you can't go wrong in reminding politely managers. And I've reminded even the president of Nokia, who's my boss sometimes. But we have that responsibility. And if you have a culture within your organization, and I'm sure that the principles of your company are written somewhere in an employee handbook or on a poster. We used to have it at Nokia. And I used to sometimes remind my colleagues what our corporate values are.
Yeah.
It's I'm sure, because I've been in this frustrating situations where, and I'm dealing with some now at HP, where some recommendations that I made 2 years ago are now coming true, and there's this burning to say I told you so, but it's like, okay, you got to let it go. But I would say, do it for yourself, because it's better to try, and if it's not adopted or not, you still know in your deep down that you gave it your best shot. Because when you start to die if you don't try, you have to keep trying. That's what it's that purpose that we talked about. That's what you have to keep trying, and that's hard. It is, but like Rowan said, I'm sure the company.
Remember, that's also the difference between management and leadership. Management, you can control the things under your leadership, is to control things beyond your control, and that, in essence, is what is required of all of us to change the things we can't change.
Yeah.
Easy.
No problem.
Leaders lead by example. Managers tell you what to do. So what kind of managers or what kind of leaders are you? Look within yourself. I know it's not easy. I know it's difficult. I understand the challenges that you're facing because I was there. And I've been very fortunate that I no longer have to be managed. I manage myself. But I do follow great leadership, and I respect great leadership. And I'm hoping that some of you who are not in those positions yet will be in the not-too-distant future. But it's taking that additional initiatives and doing things that are extraordinary. So one of the things that you talk about leadership. You know, as I was telling you the story about Branson, one of the things, because I like to understand why companies work well, why they succeed, and also why they fail. So one of the things that I've done in the past, I would talk to people to get an understanding of the culture. And as I traveled and experienced Virgin, I'm at the clubhouse, which is their lounge, and there's a shoeshine guy at London Heathrow, and I was going to London quite regularly, and I see him, and, the guy is always very happy. He's shining my shoes, and then he starts giving me a foot massage. And after seeing him there now on several trips, I started talking to him, and I said, how are you doing? He said, I just came back with the missus and the family from Orlando, from Florida. We went to Disney World. And I said, well, what happened? He said, Sir Richard listened to me. And he goes, we have the founder who's a multi-billionaire. He invites his employees, and he goes, he invites me. I'm a shoe shine guy. I shine shoes. And I'm at his mansion at a party, and he comes up to me and he says, what can we do together that would enhance a customer experience? And I told him, I said, well, there's people, because I shine shoes, but he goes, people are coming in from the US, they're flying all night, their feet swell up. I'm going to give them a foot massage. And you know what Branson said? That's a brilliant idea. And he goes, we're going to implement that. And he goes, for your suggestion, I'm going to send you and your family for a week vacation as a bonus. So do you know what that individual said? He goes, I love my job, and I would not think of working anywhere else. And the reason is because the leadership listened, heard him, and deployed and executed. And that makes a difference. And they rewarded him, and they acknowledged him, and they made him an employee of the month. He's not making more money shining shoes, but he was acknowledged as an employee of the month, as an innovator. And you think about it, it's like, he's a shoe shine guy, but an innovator. So what I want to tell you is that you have it within each and every one of you to innovate and do your job better, to do it differently, and to contribute to that. If a shoe shine guy at London Heathrow can do it, imagine what you can do.
It can be done. I mean, we've been, very fortunate to have a fair degree of financial success in our respective careers, and that it wasn't, we found ways to overcome the challenges, and it's hard. It is. I've had a lot of probably the nights where you go home pretty frustrated, and it is, but you have to kind of dive back into it, and you can.
What I think I just want to say is that these might be the people side of things of the technology, but it is essential that these lessons be incorporated in your conversations. And take my word for it, when you hit a dam wall enough times it breaks. So it's about believing in what works and making it a reality.
What would be probably most rewarding, at least from me, at the came over here to do this. There was a great introduction for Roman to South Africa, and did it as a favor for a friend. But I would love to hear in a few weeks' time or a month or whatever, something that you overcame or something you got to get paid for doing this is. It's meaningless. It's just that I don't care about being compensated for this, but it would be really rewarding for me to hear that you got something out of it and you applied it and said, you know what, I went back, I took another shot at this, and this is what came out of it. That's cool.
we're mixing up a number of disciplines in this discussion. You'll see that I'm bringing in some anthropologists.
You put a couple of anthropologists out in front of you.
So anticipate more of it this afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit, so I'll continue my presentation this afternoon. And we are going to talk about new ideas, new business models, new possibilities, but a very strong undercurrent will be in understanding why people use the things we do. So your hiring thing we're going to do, why do you hire a milkshake to do? So that's going to be on the agenda this afternoon. And why you should take cognizance of that theory in order to understand the positioning of products and making it more acceptable for the user. But we'll hit the wireless revolution, we'll talk about converged products, we'll take a look at the 5 change dimensions, we're going to talk about new business opportunities, the reframing business proposition, and we're going to talk about some 10 ideas that is breaking the mold of old-fashioned thinking in terms of new generation business models. So that's going to be part and parcel this afternoon. And then some ideas, what's the learnings from a hyper-connected world? How does the world of business work differently in a hyper-connected world than in one of linear value creation? That's going to be part and parcel of this afternoon session.